Hello, my name is Chris, and I want to thank you for joining this TenantCloud podcast. If you haven't listened to the previous podcasts in this series, which is how to find a tenant quickly, I would highly recommend going back and listening to the first 4 episodes of this series. You can find those at tenantcloud.com/podcasts or wherever you are currently listening to this podcast right now. The previous episodes of this series are how to find a tenant quickly, creating a high-quality rental listing, where we went into how to create a high-quality rental listing, and that's everything from the photos to the description and to capturing your audience's attention early on, right as soon as they pull up the listing. The second episode was offering great incentives to encourage tenant referrals, which is a great podcast episode because it's a quick and easy way to get high quality tenants without really spending any time or any significant amount of money to get those tenants. And then the third episode was how to work with an agent, such as a real estate agent, a apartment locator, and how all of that works and ways to get results quicker than you might otherwise. So there's some tips and tricks in that episode that I'd highly recommend checking out on how to work with real estate agents or locators better. And then the latest episode was being flexible with your rental properties in terms of being flexible with your scheduling, with your tours, and maybe even doing tours that you don't necessarily have to be there. So setting up remote tours for your rentals, or even setting up tours where they can just go and do a self-tour themselves. There's a lot of technology and tools around allowing that to happen depending on the type of rental you currently manage or own. And so I definitely recommend going and checking out those episodes. Now, today's episode is on how to avoid rental application roadblocks. Even the most qualified tenants who may be interested in your rental property will walk away if the application process is too cumbersome and presents too many roadblocks. Some of those things might be extremely high security deposits, or maybe not having alternatives to high security deposits. It could be any number of reasons why you might lose a potential applicant, and not just any potential applicant, highly qualified applicants. And so you want to make sure that you are not inadvertently setting up rental application roadblocks that make things overly complicated for your tenants. You want to make sure that the application process is simple. You want to make sure that it is clearly laid out so that your applicant knows what the next steps are and what the entire process is. You want to make sure that up front they know about any deposit amounts that might be owed, and if those deposit amounts might be higher than normal for your market. And even if it is normal for your market, you might be attracting potential applicants that are not familiar with your market. And so they may be coming from a market where, let's say the security deposit is only 1 month's rent, but in your area, maybe it is 2 months' rent, the first and last months. And you want to make sure that you are clear on how that works with your particular rental, along with how those refunds work and how that last month's security deposit might work if you charge one, because some leases, it's just actually the last month of rent. And so you want to make sure that your tenants are familiar with how that works. In fact, some states are even starting to regulate excessive deposits because some of those are getting what some might define as out of hand. And so they may be coming from a market like that where maybe it's regulated and you can't charge in excess of a certain amount, but maybe your market does not have those same laws or ordinances in place. And so again, it just helps to make sure that the applicant is aware of those roadblocks in advance. Other things that you may want to make sure that they know of ahead of time are if you allow pets. Do you charge pet rent? Do you charge pet deposits? Are there pet fees that are non-refundable involved? Is there additional insurance required as a part of having a pet? Do you have rental application criteria in place? And if so, what are those? They should be able to view those in advance, even prior to filling out any application paperwork. or at the very least, that criteria should be provided at the time that they are completing the paperwork so that they can read it all together. And again, you want to make it as simple and as streamlined as possible, because a lot of people, even highly qualified applicants, may walk away if that process is too cumbersome. In addition to those things, there are a few more things that might be obstacles to your potential applicants. One of those is along the lines of deposits is high application fees. Those are things that tend to push a lot of people away from applying for rental properties if there's a high application fee in addition to any potential screening costs. So let's say you have an application fee of $75 and then there's another screening cost of $30. All in all, they're paying over $100 just to apply for your rental without any guarantees, and all of those funds are typically non-refundable. So you may want to consider your application fees if you are encountering a difficult time getting people to apply for your rental, especially if people are coming in touring, but then ultimately not applying. One of the factors for why they might not be applying is because your application fees are too high. The second thing is your credit check requirements. You want to make sure that your credit check requirements are in line with your local market and that they make sense to the potential renter, as well as, of course, for your own rental property and protecting your investment. However, you may want to consider alternative ways to assessing a potential renter's creditworthiness. Rather than just looking at their actual credit score, maybe looking more at the rental history or their employment verification, their employment history, if they've been with an employer for 3, 4, 5 years, and they have good income coming in and all of their essential and core bills are paid on time, then you may want to look at those things rather than just looking at a credit score itself. Lack of flexibility. If you have a rigid set of requirements for your rental application, such as a minimum credit score or a minimum income level, that's on the flip side of things. So let's say you have a credit score requirement of 620 or maybe even 700, and you require a high income level of 60,000 a year, or 3 times the amount of rent, or 4 times, or whatever it might be. You may want to look to make sure that you are, again, in line with the local marketplace and the type of rental that you are trying to rent out, because maybe other rentals that are comparable to yours in the local market are only requiring 2.5 or 3 times the rent, whereas yours is 4 times the rent. And so you are turning away a lot of potential qualified applicants who otherwise can afford your rental property. They have a good credit score, but they don't have the income requirements for your rental property. So you want to make sure that you are in line with your local market and that you are balancing that with the needs of your particular rental property. The other thing is a time-consuming application process. I have applied for rental properties before, and one, it took about 3 weeks for all of the screening results to come back because it was such an in-depth application process. And we ultimately got approved for the rental property, but the amount of time really made us start looking elsewhere, and we actually started touring other rental properties because it was taking so long just to get through this rental application process for our first preferred rental property we were applying for. And so you want to make sure that you are utilizing a process and streamlining things in such a way that you're not deterring potential applicants or even allowing them the time to go look elsewhere. Because had we found something that we had liked other than the place that we had applied to, we probably would have applied there. And if they had a quicker application process and approved us quicker, we probably would have selected that place instead. So it is important, if you do have a lengthy process and you don't have any ways to get around it and you can't make it any quicker for whatever reason, you do want to make sure that your potential applicants know that at the time of applying, that, hey, here's the process. It's steps A, B, and C. Each step is going to take approximately this long. So don't stress out or get concerned if you're not hearing back from me. It's just going to take this many days. And just laying that out and being very transparent about your application process for your prospective tenants. The other thing that could deter people and be a roadblock is lack of communication. And that kind of ties into the whole time consuming part, and being transparent is over communicate with your prospective tenants about what the process is and make sure that it's very clearly laid out. And if you can communicate that in a way that they are comfortable with and that makes sense to them, then you will avoid losing prospective tenants during the application process, or maybe even before they pay that application fee, and just making your prospective tenants feel comfortable in the process of applying for your rental property. So those are a few of the core things about setting up inadvertently potential roadblocks. And really it comes down to making sure that you are very familiar with your local market and that you're not out of touch with the current practices of other comparable rentals in your area, including in your local neighborhood, maybe not even just in your city, but in your neighborhood on your block, and making sure that you are firmly in line with the common trends going on in the marketplace. As always, thank you for tuning in to this TenantCloud podcast, and I will look forward to talking with you in our next episode as a part of the How to Find a Tenant Quickly series.